The independence of Latvia has long been fought over. During the Second World War in 1940, Latvia was first occupied by the Soviets. In 1941, the country was invaded again and then occupied by soldiers from Nazi Germany. At that time, Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga, Latvia's first female president, was just 4 years old. In her short life, she'd known little but war.
We saw planes flying low and tanks blowing up, and at the distance.
In 1944, 3 years into the Nazi occupation, Soviet troops returned to occupy Latvia once again.
I do remember that stream of refugees. There were Russians, there were Ukrainians, there were Belarusians. They were fleeing from Stalin's regime. Well, we left Latvia 3 days before the Red Army marched in on October 10, 1944. It was a very difficult decision because we had no idea what was going on in the world. My dad had been trying to listen to BBC broadcasts. In fact, his life was in danger if he was caught doing that, and trying to get a sense of what was happening worldwide, because of course on the radio here it was all German propaganda.
Under Soviet rule in the Baltic States, whole families, women, children and old people were deported to camps in Siberia.
To Siberia or beyond. I know several people who traveled for a month and were taken to the far north and the far east of the Soviet Union. Men particularly were taken beyond the polar circle, where they did not survive for long. They were taken to either gold mines or salt mines or coal mines, again mostly in a very far north, and given starvation rations. But anybody who had been linked to government or anybody who had been an army officer and who had been arrested, they all got shot in 1942.
Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga's family fled to refugee camps in Germany. In 1949, various countries offered to take in immigrants from the camps.
Canada sounded attractive, but Canada did not take families with small children. Canada only wanted strong, single men for either lumber industry in the north, for mines, or for weeding beet fields in Saskatchewan, and women who would be able to work as housekeepers or maids. It changed later, but at that time in 1949 we wanted to come to Canada. We wound up in Morocco instead.
After 5 years in Morocco, the move to Canada was made. It was Canada where Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga spent the majority of her working life as a professor of psychology at the University of Montreal. 2 months after her retirement in 1998, she took a phone call that would change her life.
Somebody says, "Hello, is this Dr. Freiberga?" "Yes." "This is the Prime Minister of Latvia calling." "Oh, well, how do you do?" "We have just had a cabinet meeting in which we have decided to found a Latvian institute, and we need a person with a knowledge of Western mentality."
At that time, Latvia was experiencing a newfound independence following the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991. Elected in June 1999, Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga served 2 terms as president and was instrumental in achieving Latvia's membership to NATO and the European Union. Following Russia's annexation of Crimea and its involvement in Ukraine, she is not alone in believing the sovereignty of the Baltic States is under threat again. To bolster the defence of the region, NATO has deployed 4 multinational battlegroups to the Baltics and Poland. In Latvia, the group is led by Canada.
For me personally, it was a big thrill that it was Canada, of all the other possibilities, who was taking the responsibility. It underlines that NATO is a transatlantic alliance. I love that aspect of it. We are not arming for a war. We are hoping there will never be a war, and it won't be necessary. But it is sending a signal, because we have seen the invasion of sovereign countries by the armed troops already in Georgia and in Ukraine. There are 2 precedents, not just one, and we would not like this trend to continue.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin claims the deployment of troops is a provocation, while NATO says it's exercising collective defence and deterrence. The NATO battle groups total roughly 4,000 personnel.
Does anybody in Russia seriously feel threatened and encircled by armies of the size of that of Estonia with its 1.5 million inhabitants and Latvia with barely 2 million at the moment in country? I mean, does it make any kind of sense to pull out that sort of rhetoric when you on the other side have your best paratroopers, the latest equipment, and hundreds of thousands of troops massed? Who is encircling whom, I'd like to know.
In Latvia's capital Riga, reminders of the Soviet occupation can be seen. There's even a museum of occupation which is situated in a former KGB building.
This building was center for the secret police at the time of the first occupation in 1940. It was called the house on a corner, and so many people who were simply taken, people sometimes were picked off the street and just brought here. I mean, you didn't always get a notice saying you are asked to present yourself at this building. More often than not, either they were woken up in the middle of the night or picked off the street and just brought here, tortured in the basements, and also there's a place for executions.
Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga is still working in international politics, but now has more time to spend with her family. In Canada, she brought up 2 children. She taught them Latvian and would always remind them of their roots, especially her son Carlis.
Where he says, I told my friends at school that my name is Bob, because his second name is Robert. He says, I am Bob, not Carlis, but Bob. And one day he hears his mother answer the telephone and saying, whom would you like to speak to? Bob? There's no Bob here. And then he had to decide, and he decided that he would say Carlos after all.